Stand on a stone causeway at dawn and watch a whole ancient city rise from open water, gleaming, impossible, and built to command an empire. This was Tenochtitlan, capital of the Aztec Empire, a sprawling metropolis larger than most cities in Europe, born from a swamp and a prophecy. In only 2 centuries it rose to command more than 1 million subjects, then vanished in a siege so brutal the lake ran red with ash and blood. Legend says the wandering Mexica people searched for generations, exiles hunting for a sign, an eagle perched on a cactus, devouring a serpent. They found it on a marshy island in Lake Texcoco, land nobody else wanted, surrounded on every side by hostile neighbors who mocked their arrival. In 1325, they began driving wooden stakes into mud, building foundations where the soft ground refused to hold anything at all. What started as scattered reed huts and desperation would become one of the most brilliantly engineered cities the ancient world had ever seen. Canals replaced ordinary streets, chinampas turned swampland into floating gardens, and long causeways stitched the island firmly to the shore. Within a single lifetime, outsiders became master architects, and the once mocked refugees began reshaping the entire Valley of Mexico forever. Power came through alliance, not conquest, when Tenochtitlan joined Texcoco and Tlacopan to form the Triple Alliance in 1428. Together, the 3 cities crushed the Tepanec overlords, who once demanded endless tribute, and the balance of the valley shifted almost overnight. Tribute now flowed inward instead of outward, gold and cacao, brilliant feathers and jade, pouring across causeways into royal storehouses. Each emperor who followed pushed the borders further, sending warriors south and east, until nearly 300 cities paid tribute and homage. By the time of Moctezuma I, the empire stretched across mountains, jungles and coastlines few ordinary Mexica had ever once imagined. The city that began as an insult to its weary founders now sat proudly at the center of the most feared and organized empire across the Americas. Picture the great market at Tlatelolco, where 60,000 people gathered daily to trade turkeys, textiles, herbs, and obsidian blades. The sheer noise alone stunned Spanish soldiers decades later, men who compared it to nothing they had ever witnessed in Rome or Constantinople. Aqueducts carried fresh spring water down from Chapultepec, while sewage systems kept the city canals cleaner than most cities across Europe. Children studied in schools depending on class, priests trained through rigid discipline, and commoners learned trades passed through generations. Nobles wore flowing cloaks dyed in cochineal red and quetzal green, colors so vivid they marked rank more clearly than any spoken word ever could. At night, flickering torchlight reflected off canal water, and the sound of flutes drifted from temple courtyards into the sleeping city streets. At the heart of it all rose the Templo Mayor, twin pyramids honoring Huitzilopochtli and Tlaloc, gods of relentless war and of the giving rain. The Aztecs believed the sun itself required nourishment, that without sacrifice, the cosmos would collapse into permanent, eternal darkness. Priests climbed the steep stone steps in ceremonies meant to keep balance between gods and mortals, between fragile life and looming annihilation. To outsiders, these rituals looked like pure horror, but to the Mexica they were survival, a covenant older than the city itself had ever demanded. Festivals filled the sacred calendar, honoring maize, honoring rain, honoring the fragile order that kept a vast civilization alive and thriving. Every stone of that great temple had been raised by hands that believed the fate of the world depended on what happened at its distant summit. War was never chaos here, it was theology, a sacred duty to capture enemies alive rather than killing them on distant, blood-soaked fields. Young men trained from early childhood, and status rose with every captive brought home, permanent tattooed proof etched into weathered skin. Flower wars kept rival cities in careful check without full conquest, a brutal balance of pressure that lasted for nearly a century straight. By the early 1500s, the empire's reach stretched from the Gulf Coast to the Pacific shore, a vast web of tribute, fear, and control. Yet that same vast reach created bitter enemies, cities forced into submission, who waited only for a chance to break Tenochtitlan's iron grip. That simmering resentment would soon become the empire's single greatest vulnerability, one no Mexica ruler could have predicted or prepared for. In 1519, strange ships appeared off the eastern coast, carrying men, horses, and steel, the likes of which nobody here had ever seen. Moctezuma II watched troubling reports arrive with growing unease, uncertain whether these visitors were conquerors sent by gods or omens. Hernán Cortés marched inland, gathering thousands of resentful native allies from cities that had suffered decades under harsh Aztec tribute. When he entered Tenochtitlan, even hardened soldiers stood in stunned silence, amazed by causeways, temples, and an entire city built on water. For several months, an uneasy peace held between conqueror and emperor, a truce built on curiosity, quiet fear, and careful mutual calculation. Then sudden violence erupted during a religious festival massacre, and that fragile peace shattered into open warfare across the whole city. Moctezuma died amid the chaos, and his furious people rose against the invaders, driving them out during one desperate, bloody night of slaughter. The Spanish would later call it the Night of Sorrows, fleeing across causeways as warriors struck from canoes and rooftops in the darkness. But Cortés soon returned, this time with allied armies numbering in the tens of thousands, while smallpox was tearing brutally through the city. For 75 days the siege continued, canals choked with bodies, temples burning, the once thriving capital slowly starving into ruin. On August 13th, 1521, Tenochtitlan fell for good, and an empire 2 centuries in the making ended in smoke and total ruins. Where floating gardens once bloomed beneath the sun, colonial stone would soon rise, and a new city called Mexico City would grow from the ashes. And yet, despite conquest, plague, and the total collapse of everything they had built, the Mexica people did not simply disappear forever. Their language, their descendants, and countless fragments of their world still live beneath the streets of modern Mexico City to this very day. Archaeologists still uncover pieces of the Templo Mayor buried beneath colonial buildings, proof the old city was never erased from existence. History never vanishes. It only waits quietly beneath the surface for someone curious enough to dig a little deeper and finally look closely. If this journey through a lost ancient empire captivated you, consider subscribing for more cinematic dives into forgotten worlds and history. And tell us in the comments below which lost city or vanished empire you want reconstructed and explored next in our upcoming documentary series. Because somewhere beneath our own feet, another Tenochtitlan may be waiting quietly in the dark for its story to finally be told once again.